All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Major Music Lounge podcast. Today we're joined by DJ Matty Lite. What's good, my brother?
Not too much. It's Monday. Monday evening, Monday afternoon. Got a good game coming up, so we're both excited for that. And just talking to you, the nice end cap to the day.
Nice end cap for the day. Definitely a pleasure to have you on. Been kind of crossing paths, I guess, over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
Since we started following each other, and I got a chance to listen to some of those tracks. We'll get into that. I
Awesome.
like what you're doing. I really wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about who is DJ Matty Lite. Like, how did your journey start as a DJ and a producer?
Oh, sure. I've been into music since I was real young. My grandfather played like the organ in church when I was like a wee man. And I always thought that was cool. I played the trumpet in elementary school up until high school. So I like that. But I always liked music. My parents, I remember listening to my parents' Michael Jackson records and Billy Joel records, and I like the harmonies and I like the beats. And, when I was in third grade, I was Axl Rose in a lip sync contest, which I lost, but that's okay. I always liked the sounds and the noise. So it was always something that I did. I always had music around me. A story I've told before, but I'll share it with you. I got into hip hop very early. My neighbor was a year older than me, but he had an older brother that played football when he was in high school and we were younger. So he was home later. So we would sneak in his room and copy all his old tapes. And he had all the stuff. He had the Big Daddy Kane and the De La Soul and Public Enemy and all those. And I didn't know a lot of what it was at the time, but I thought the music was good and that the artwork was intimidating and there was a lot of cool stuff with it. It was great to listen to, and you listen to it now and it was just it was almost like punk records. They're just telling you what was going on in the streets, regardless of what it was. And I always liked both sides of music. I liked Nirvana, and I liked Public Enemy, and I liked Green Day, and I liked Notorious B.I.G. So I always balanced both. I played in a punk rock band from when I was 19 up, and played in various bands up until a few years ago. But always with me the whole time, I always had hip hop with me, regardless. It was always, if you look at my record collection or my tape collection, it's either going to be punk rock rather, or some offshoot of that. So whether it's hardcore or a ska, and it's going to be hip hop, whether it's underground or mainstream or Anticon or whatever, it's going to be that kind of thing. So that's kind of just how I am. I used to spin records at a bar in my old hometown every Tuesday. I'd spin punk rock and hip hop and ska and things of that nature. And I did a couple of stints out here in Chicago before COVID. And then about a year ago, October was when I put out my first song with Prime Prolific. So we're almost approaching a year. I just kind of got into producing and beat making, taking what I learned from recording in my bands, but kind of bringing it to hip hop, which, for better or worse, here I am.
Yeah, we have a lot of similarities in just in our journeys together. I was also a brass player in pretty much middle school, some of high school. Then they made me switch to the baritone, and then they made me play the French horn with that.
No kidding. What did you play originally?
I was trumpet player in all of like middle school, and then probably some of my freshman year. It was kind of like midway of my freshman year in high school. Band director came up to me and like, would you be interested in playing baritone? So I really didn't want to, but I felt like I was kind of being forced.
Sure.
So I ended up rolling with it, and then from there I went on to the French horn, and that's really the main three instruments I played. I wanted to actually at some point get into like the sax. I don't know. I've always been enamored with the sax for some reason.
It's a great sound.
Yeah, great sound, smooth sound.
Sure. And so those reed instruments. It's different than the chops. It's a whole different animal.
Because with the chops, you gotta make sure you warm up first. And
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have the chops? I don't. I don't think that would.
A little bit. I actually bought a trumpet. Kind of funny you were talking about like some of the things you did during the pandemic. Well, that was one of the things that I did during the pandemic was I bought a trumpet during the pandemic. And I haven't put any in my music yet, but I've just been kind of retooling and revisiting, playing scales and just remembering all my music theory. And I think once I get a little comfortable with that and, the chops itself, I'm going to get back into maybe putting that on some live records. We'll see. Did
you have any like music books or anything back in the day?
Yeah. I had some, we actually, I think they used to make us have this like book of scales. And then we also like, the band that I was in, we did a lot of show music. So we would go perform at these festivals and they would give us a big binder full of all the show music as well, with scales that were kind of in relation to it. But that, I didn't stay in band all 4 years. I got out after my sophomore year because I'm originally from Louisiana, and down there in the summers doing all that marching in the heat is just it's a little too much for me.
Some great music out of there though. I like that a lot. I like a lot of that second line from New Orleans. Well, I like a lot of that stuff, and I like a lot of like the Dixieland, and that's always good to hear and listen to. But yeah, that's a heart march for sure.
And doing Mardi Gras parades, I remember marching. Man, it was actually more than a couple of miles, and your feet are just hurting after that, and you have to hold a horn like this the whole time. And
yeah. I think I had a book of like, I think soundtracks. So I think the Jurassic Park theme was in it. And there were some other like kind of, 90s and 80s, like kind of classic movies, that a lot of John Williams stuff that would have a lot of the horns and things that would be in there. But I think Jurassic Park actually had to play in a middle school band in Memorial Day parade. We did the Jurassic Park song.
We actually did a show. My freshman year was actually Jurassic Park, and then my sophomore year was Interview with the Vampire. We did a lot of the theme music from there, and we had to do it, at the festival, all the formations and everything. And, yeah, that was pretty cool, going out and seeing different bands doing that. That part I do miss, but it's just a grind.
Of course. It's good to get back into it, though. I wonder if I still have my old one. I'd have to check, but I'd be interested to see if I could, still get into it. I mean, I can read the music or whatever else, but I don't know if I'd have the lips for it anymore for sure.
So also, you were really talking about, on one hand, being into punk rock, but on the other hand, being into hip hop. And those are widely two different dynamics in terms of music. Just explain, I guess, the differences, from your point of view, as far as, what went into making music that was punk rock versus what goes into making hip hop music.
I think for me, they're both the same. And I know that may sound weird, but I can kind of explain why. Being in a punk rock band, and I wouldn't even say punk as like, we didn't have mohawks or whatever. It was more pop influenced punk rock, right? But you want to make sure you have the structure there. Like, do you have a good intro? Do you have, the verse? Do you have the chorus? How many times is the chorus in the song? Is there something in the second verse that's a little different than the first to differentiate the two and keep someone interested? Because with pop music, the second verse, there's going to be changes and things to make sure you're engaged and listening to it. So I feel like, how can I apply that to the stuff I make now? And I feel that even in the hip hop world, there's still elements of making sure that there's the proper amount of choruses. Do I do the things necessary to keep the second verse different from the first? So it's kind of, I want to take the pop songs and make them into, songs with copyright. But how do I do that, from using sampled sounds or sampled things? Can I add little, flourishes of different elements? Can I add a flute over here? Can I add a string here or a tambourine part just to keep it, keep the listener engaged for 3.5 minutes? It's 2021. No one's going to give you 10 minutes anymore. So I want to make sure I can at least get 3, And so that's kind of, I there's a reason songs by the Beatles and Foo Fighters or Van Halen or all these bands, like they have that timeless kind of sound or whatever. What is it about that works? Is it the song length? Is it how many verses are there? Those types of things. So I try to be conscious of that when working with artists, to make sure that, you know, it's appealing to the listeners, is the phrase I'd like to use.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever, you know, kind of with that being said, were there any, I guess the question would be, did you ever apply any instrumentation, you know, maybe from that side to hip hop before?
Maybe not live instrumentation, but I'm not afraid to use guitars. You know, I like horns. I like those kind of things. I like percussion. I like adding tambourines and shakers and other stuff to choruses to really kind of beef them up and make them full. You know, I don't think putting like a double time punk beat in a hip hop song would make sense at all. But I'm not afraid of using noises and other things that like may not fit in someone's typical hip hop song, but I don't really care because it's what I like. You know, when Public Enemy was making Fear of a Black Planet and all, there was a ton of noises in there that probably didn't make sense at the time, but no one would think twice about it now. You know, so I don't mind hearing like a guitar chord ring out, or you know, noises that may be a little like shrieky or shrill, but if it's only once in a while, it's interesting. It keeps you guessing. That's what I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can totally dig that. I think, you know, kind of with that being said, I think people should make the type of music that they want to make. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all about experimenting. And me just personally as a music fan, I like a lot of that originality, you know, as far as kind of what you were saying. You may add some elements to it sometimes to hip hop, but they never really cross over in that regard. I guess you could say nothing will sound really too punk rockish, because just from hearing like the tracks, which we'll get into, you have kind of that old school grimy hip hop sound, and I like that. And I kind of noticed that in your music. What are you using to produce? What do you make?
So much like my good friend Calvin, I also use an iPad.
Okay.
But I use it for sequencing, and I really kind of do the heavy lifting in Logic. You know, I think Beatmaker is great, and I think making music in an iPad or any type of hardware or software to be used is awesome. But I feel that, especially with Beatmaker, there's a lot of limitations, and I'm not trying to get every single plugin for it, because I have the Mac and I have the setup. I can use those. So I use it more for simply just arranging, really getting a good like balance of sounds, and then really taking it to Logic and fine tuning the reverbs and the compressors and, you know, pannings and things of that to really kind of put it into that stereoscope. I want to focus more on mixing. I'm trying to get into that more. You know, the last couple of songs, like the one with Copywrite I mixed myself, and the Tones record I did. So I really want to try to get better at doing that aspect. I feel I'm decent at arranging a beat in iPad, but really how do I make it a hit and how do I make it shine? And that's going to be out of the box, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. We're kind of similar there as well with, I use Beatmaker. I would say though, like I do a lot of production in Beatmaker, but also like yourself, I don't always mix in Beatmaker. I may import it to or bounce it out to Logic and finish my mix there, simply because of all the plugins I have on the Mac versus what I have on my iPad. And I can get away with it on iPad, but it's just something about, I've been a Logic user probably since 2008 with Logic 8, and then gotten to 9, and then 10 is current. And then Beatmaker, I would say probably next to using the MPC and Machine, that's probably my third favorite application to make beats in. But I also do like, you know, in other apps like Chord Gadget and Cubase's on the iPad, I do like to even arrange. I prefer arranging in Beatmaker over those as well, just for the layout and just the workflow seems a little bit more efficient, you know, because I know where everything is. I can pan things along those lines. When was it that you discovered Beatmaker? Like, is it when you possibly met Calvin, or was it before that?
It was prior to that. Calvin was one of the early people I met through social media. But I knew on the apps there was like, I think there's an MPC emulator as an app as well, I think. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I know like there's hardware. I know I was looking at Machine as one of them, as far as kind of like ease, ease and that, obviously getting into something, you want to be a little bit easy to use and navigate, be user friendly. And as far as, but I also didn't have a big Mac at the time. I had my old laptop, which wouldn't be conducive to probably running big software on that. But I had an iPad. So I figured like, well, I have an iPad and I got Beatmaker and the MPC app. And I like Beatmaker more. I think getting the samples cut was a little more user friendly. It seemed easier. Yeah. Now you can't pitch up in well, you can, but it's not the same. But I feel it's just overall ease of use. The fact that you can, turn the keys into, you can put a bass note and do the 16 keys, but you can also fix the semitones and the octaves, and it makes it easy because the arrow's right there. It's very easy to fly through and add your own noises and put it in. I'm pretty good with music, like from the trumpet, so I know what key something is in. I can find it pretty quickly, so I know what the scale is and whatever else. So I feel for me, that's kind of how I get into it. It's just more of just like doing a little research and kind of what's easy for me. Is it the best way to do it? I don't know. It works for me, and I'll ride it until I can't.
Yeah.
I've gotten this far with it, so far so good. Knock on wood.
I started off in Beatmaker 2, and then moved on to 3. And the first time I can remember seeing part 2, I actually went to a iStandard music producer conference, and there were some guys there that they were playing beats on an iPad. So at first I would just thought it was, just through the music app. Mm-hmm. So I look a little closer and I'm like, what is this? So at that time, that was Beatmaker 2. Right. And that was around 2016, 2017. And then from there, I kind of stuck with it. I stuck with iPad music production. Now, as far as Logic, do you do a lot of your composing in Logic as well? Like with a lot of the internal instruments?
No, I have so there's a composer named Waxy, and he puts out one shots, and he's got a lot of cool things to add. So I'll do a lot of the add-ons in Beatmaker. I haven't really messed with the instrumentation in Logic yet. I don't even think I know how to, which I'm sure it's like airing myself out, but whatever. I know that there's a lot of instruments in it. I just don't know how to load it and use it. And I'm sure it's super easy. I just haven't done it. And now that I think of it, I should probably learn how to, but I have a lot of sounds and instrumentation and one shots and things that I use that are in the iPad already that I have saved. So I'll use those if I want to add like, a violin, and I'll just, play along or do those types of things. Or I haven't really dove into the whole Logic setup yet.
Yeah. I make beats in it every once in a while. I won't say it's necessarily a regular thing for me. Just when I kind of feel like I want a different workflow or something, outside of Machine and MPC. But I'm just so used to, I will say this. I do record like vocals because I'm an artist too. So I do a lot of my music in Logic, as well as mixing and engineering as well. But for the most part, again, those other programs kind of where I do most of my production. So I
don't mean to interrupt, but how do you like Machine? Because the reason I ask is I always wonder, like, should I have gotten that? And I know a lot of people use it. Producers I like use it. My neighbor has one and he's trying to sell me it. So I'm always curious, but I've never taken the dive.
I love it. I've been using Machine for about 3 generations now. I started off with the original Machine 1 in 2009. Yeah. And ever since then, you know, I upgraded to the second version they came out with. Now they're on the third version. I actually use the mini, but one of the other reasons I don't stop using it is I've so much invested in it in terms of like expansions over the course of 10, 12 years.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's just something like when I open up Machine, I can get to work. I know how to navigate it. I have it organized a certain way with all my samples. Okay. And I just like the whole scene and clips type sequencer that they have in there. Now, I don't really mix in there all the time because I may take those tracks and bounce them out to Logic kind of the same way I do Beatmaker. But as far as like the production itself, I like everything about it. The sampler even. The one thing I will say though is they originally on the sampler, it allowed you to chop your samples in real time on all the units at one time. Oh. But they took that feature away from the mini. So all the upper tier models will have the ability to chop in real time, which kind of actually, in some cases when I'm sampling, I prefer to use like the MPC because of the real time chopping. And I could just plug the MPC up to like my iPad, my record player, you know, and get going, chop up some samples and, you know, get to banging out. But yeah, I wish they would have some kind of trial or something for people to try, you know, without having to buy it. But, you know,
it's a gamble, or, you know, it's an investment, sure. But maybe, you know, if I outgrow Beatmaker, it's probably something to look at. Have you tried that Serato thing they have, the Serato sample? Have you played with that?
I have not. It's funny that you said that. Calvin was actually, when he was on the show, he kind of talked about him using that Serato a little bit. And, you know, I hadn't really known that they really got into that whole production lane because I thought they were just into like DJ products.
Right, because I used to use that, you know, for digital stuff. Yeah, I tried the trial and it was interesting. You know, you put a song in and it has like, it'll auto chop it for you and it'll tell you like, oh, this is where we think you should do it. Wow. But because it does, you know, for me, it took the fun out of it. But I was just curious if you'd given it a whirl.
I may do it. I had to pull back probably, I would say last year, because I got into just buying apps, plugins, everything. And till this day, some of it I haven't even touched.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Well, you didn't know if you were going to go back outside again. So you're like, I got to get these apps. So I think there's a 30-day trial if you're curious. You know, unlike Machine, they give you a couple of days to give it a whip.
I'll check it out though. I always actually kind of also wanted to dabble a little bit in DJing. You know, I didn't know if I really get into it, but I just wanted to try it. Maybe do some of my projects with some mixes to it. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll get there.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about your recent music. So I listened to the tracks with Blaq Poet and Copywrite. Liked all of those tracks.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I did notice on the cover of the Tones single, you had strings and snares done by you. Mm-hmm. Was that kind of an instrumental collab?
So a lot of my artwork that I do, I don't like to just put produced. I try to make it snappy. I don't know why. I just try to keep it unique, and maybe it's my own thing. So like on the Sankofa record, The Floodgates, it says, it'll say like musical soundscape by Matty Lite. This one says strings and snares. There's been another one that I think I did a tones one. I'd have to look it up and it escapes me, but it's kind of like, kick and snare. Like I like to keep it snappy. It's just a little thing. I mean, at the end of the day, I produced it, but I figured because there was a lot of strings and the snare drum was pretty prevalent on that song, it would be kind of cute to say like strings and snares. It was a sample off one record. I just arranged it in such a way.
Sure. So how did you link up with Copywrite? Like, 'Cause I know he did a lot of work in the past with Ruckus Records when they were kind of.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
big fan. I mean, High Exalted, classic underground record. I just kind of approached him as a fan first, but respectful, understanding like, hey, like I know, you probably get unsolicited people all the time, but big fan. Pointed out the songs that I really enjoyed by him over, the 2 decades plus of his music, and asked him like, I'd love to work with you one day, and here's a couple of beats if you're interested, and that's the one he liked.
Wow.
So I said cool, and we eventually got some things together, and he sent me over kind of the intro and the verse. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And Tones kind of heard that and went back to it, and it was kind of just two dudes just rhyming, no chorus, no nothing, just kind of like the Meth versus Chef kind of deal.
Oh yeah, man! I was actually jamming at Meth versus Chef like a couple of days ago.
See, there you go.
It's that so that Hulu Wu-Tang TV show.
Oh yeah, that's on my watch list. There's
it's got me going back and listening to all sorts of Wu-Tang from way back, and that whole series it takes me back to a good time in music.
Sure. Is it well done? I haven't seen it yet.
It is well done. It's probably to me one of the better biographical shows that I've watched, and one of the reasons I think also is Wu-Tang is actually heavily invested in the direction of the show. It's not like it's a third party person that is doing it based on their perspective.
Sure. So their hands are involved, which is helpful.
Yeah. And then the guys that they pick to play each other, like the guy who plays the RZA talks exactly like him, man. And it's so weird.
Awesome.
And then Dave East as Method Man, he pulled it off like, yeah, I got to give him his props on that. He really did a good job on that.
I have to put that on after this then before the game. I see it, and I'm like, I see people talking about it on social media. I'm like, oh, geez, I gotta tune this in. But like, I don't do a lot of TV. Like, I got things going on. I'm doing music, whatever else, and then, it's eventually bedtime. But I'm also down to just binge watch an entire show at once. So this might be the next one.
Yeah, that's when I usually stop to watch something right before bed. I'll put something on. That's one of the shows, and kind of just get to chilling out and winding down.
Yeah, but then you watch it for 4 hours, right?
Oh yeah.
Next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. You're like,
2 in the morning. Got to get up and do something at 8 a.m.
Right. I like watching movies I've seen a million times. So like my joke is like, oh, Pulp Fiction, never seen this before. Let me put this on and watch it at midnight. See how it goes. Like, why can't we sleep?
So tell us a little bit also about the Blaq Poet joints that you sent as well. Now, is that going on something that he is putting out, or is it kind of like a collaboration project?
It's a collab project. It's going to be 5 songs. No features. Got my guy Tone Spliff on a cut. Blaq Poet was put in touch with me by a mutual connection, if you will. Being a fan of him for such a long time as well, and he put out records. He put out a couple with Stu Bangers and Vanda Slice that are great, and his Screwball days always been just great. So if you had asked me in October a year ago if I'd be talking to you about a record with Blaq Poet, I would have called you silly because I didn't think that would happen. But the fact that the person that put us kind of in touch thought so highly of the two of us working together has been great. So we kind of hash it out. We talk on the phone often, and I just found the music I think would fit him, and we went back and forth about a few things. But I think the EP is going to be good. I think fans of Poet will certainly enjoy it. Fans of his older work will certainly think it's up there with some of that dark Blaq Poet stuff that we all like. So to be able to put that record together has certainly been a dream opportunity, and certainly been something I would have never thought I'd be doing rather.
Yeah, it's and that's one of the other things. Like you mentioned how you linked up with Copywrite. You mentioned how you linked up with Blaq Poet, and it isn't too often where you get to produce for artists that you're actually a fan of. Like, right. That's one of the things that I kind of aspire to do at some point too. hopefully, you know, within the next couple of years, there are quite a few guys in the industry I want to work with. So, you know, another thing, big ups to you on that, you know, just for one, with Copywrite, just stepping up to him and, you know, as a fan and being able to get that network and connection going. And listening to those tracks, tell me a little bit about who were your influences as a producer. How was your sound influence?
I mean, getting into hip hop late 80s, early 90s and beyond, I mean, the De La Souls of the world, the Paz Boutiques of the world, the Premier production, you know, with Gangstar and J. Rue and kind of his one-offs that he did, you know, and those kind of things, you know, just those producers have that sound and those are timeless. But then, you know, when I was in my, you know, so mid 2000s, I didn't say get out of hip hop, but I just didn't listen to it as much. And then Atmosphere came around. Well, I got into it. He's been around longer than I get into it. But then I discovered like this whole Rhyme Series label. So like Brother Ali and Idea and Abilities and that crew. And then I remember when I first heard Apathy out of Connecticut. So I started following him. And then through that, I learned about like Esoteric, also from like a Boston MC. Esoteric did a record with Stu Bangers. And when I first heard that, the first song I heard off that record was called Danger, which had like Apathy, Esoteric, self-titled, and Vinny Paz all in one song. I'm like, okay, this is going to be awesome. But when I heard the song, there was like guitar stabs and it was creepy and just, it was mean. And it reminded me of like listening to 36 Chambers for the first time.
Yeah.
Because that 36 Chambers album, when you first heard it, was mean. And especially like they all had masks on. You didn't know what was going on. When I bought that tape, I remember there's 12 dudes on the cover and they all have masks on. And the first song is Bring the Ruckus. And that song is just like, okay, this is going to be something. So hearing that song brought me back to like that kind of like dangerous hip hop. But then you look up, you know, Stu's production and the things he's done. And you link up with Vanderslice and then you hear about like Marco Polo and Jake One. So like, I kind of have my ears in things in like two different generations of hip hop kind of melded together. But in thinking when to your question, thinking of Blaq Poet, like what's going to fit him? Creepy, dirty. He's not gonna really rap over like pop pianos and things of that nature.
Yeah.
It's gonna be stuff that's just like driving drums, kind of like an eerie bass line through the whole thing, and he's gonna tell you about how he like stopped some guy out. So for me, it's just like, do I have a bunch of things that will fit him? Yes, I do. But for Copywrite, knowing that he came from, you know, Eastern Conference and Ruckus, like that kind of more upbeat, like the Mos Def and Black Star and like that kind of music, like I think this one, when I heard it, I'm like, this will fit perfectly. So for me, it's kind of approaching it as a fan, of course, but like he would sound good on this because it reminds me of that record that I bought 20 years ago. So that's kind of where it comes from. It comes from like, I don't want to say like history or whatever, but kind of paying attention to what works for these guys on some of their classic stuff. So I try to keep that in mind when approaching folks like that.
Yeah, and I liked what you said really about knowing what type of sound the rapper that you're working with wants. Because you get a lot of guys that they may be sending beats to these artists, but let's just say the artist, for example, likes that boom bap sound, that old school hip hop sound. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't want to send him no trap, you know, when I know what he likes.
Of course.
And I think that kind of gets lost in creating these days because, you know, people are just trying to move beats, not necessarily to make good music, but they're more interested in selling beats, so they don't really know their audience. Right. How important do you think it is for a producer to really know the audience that he's working with?
I think that's probably the most important. And I think of like punk bands and bands I grew up on. You know, if a band has a consistent sound on albums and then they put one out that's a complete 180, if you don't bring the audience along with you for like a little bit of that, like you can put out an album and then the second one change a little bit, but not too much. and the third one change a little bit more, but not too much, you're bringing your audience with you, and it's okay. But if you put out if you have 4 albums that sound the same and you decide to like make one that sounds like the Beatles, no one's gonna like it. And maybe it'll have like revisionist history 20 years later or whatever else, and that's fine. But you have to kind of understand what works and what doesn't. And I agree with you. I think that gets lost on people. Like, I could give a shit about moving beats. It's really not important. To me, it's about making good music and understanding the people you're working with. Like the song with Tones and Tragedy Gaddafi, like that sounds like old school to me, like old school New York hip hop. Awesome. And to me, that's more important in really identifying. Like, you don't want to give, someone like Blaq Poet or Tragedy, like I said, like strings and pianos, it's not going to work, but it's going to work for copyright. It's going to work for different folks. So I think it's super important to know. And a lot of times I'll get approached by, MCs. They'll say like, send me beats, just send me a folder of beats. And I say, I don't want that. I want you to go through my stuff, and I want you to identify what makes you want to rap on it. Because if that sparks an interest, it's going to be a great song. I can send you stuff and you can force yourself to write to it. It's not going to be as good. And to me, that's also a good filter. If you don't want to take the time to go through some stuff, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's they're all 30-second clips. You can get the idea, but I think to me, it's kind of what's going to spark you as an artist. I've already done this thing, and maybe it won't be good for this person, but it might be great for that person. I can't really send myself, or I can't really send out a folder of stuff because I don't know what's going to spark creativity in somebody. And I think that is another thing that I think is super important. It's not about knowing the audience as well, but also like if you're going to do that folder thing, make sure it sounds like what people like about that person.
Yeah, we kind of operate like that as well, because I'll send the artist to the website, say, hey, because I have close to maybe 200 tracks on my BeatStars website, but I may send them on there, and I go in between a little boom bap, a little West Coast. Mm-hmm. I might make a little trap here and there, not as much as I used to when I first started. I kind of grew out of that sound. But that's what I do. I usually send them to the website, let them press play, and tell me what you like. If there's something on that website that you don't like, that maybe you like, I can make more like that, and just send you all of those tracks, maybe 5 to 10 tracks I could make, and get those out to you, and then we could kind of go from there. But that's, and then there's a lot of people as well that go onto the website, and they, for whatever reason, kind of like you were saying, maybe they don't find anything they like, or they don't get back with you, and that's kind of like their loss.
Right. That happens too, of course. People say like, oh, I like this, can I have it? And you're trying to build, so it's like, okay, and you don't hear from them for months, so it's like, so you stop doing that. It's a lot of learning as well, but you kind of, for someone to jump on something that they say they wanted, you are now, as the creator of that particular soundscape, you've now lost the opportunity to give that to someone else because you think someone has it. And that's also kind of, a pain, as you know.
A pain. It is a pain.
To put it nicely, it's a pain.
Well, one of the things I always ask every guest is, if you can give one word of advice to any up and coming music producer or DJ or even an artist, what would that be?
You say one word or one piece of advice? One piece
of advice.
Oh, find the people you like that have put out, songs or bands you like. Find out how they did it. What guitars did they use? What amps did they use? Who produced this record? When it comes to hip hop, like what drum sound is this? How did you get that low end? How did you do these things? What did you use to compress? Like those types of things, because that's what's, seeking that out and trying to emulate those things will help you develop your own sound, and I think that that's important. Is you want to have your own sound, but like you want also like a good foundation and some building blocks of people you look up to.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying rip off, I'm not saying rip off Premier's, drum kit, but do you know what he used? You know what? I mean, it's common knowledge. I mean, unfortunately, now you can go on certain things and find out what is this sound or that, but how do you do that and make it your own? Like if he started with this drum sound, take that and make it your own. How do you do that? And I think that's important. I think to just, get it, be creative daily somehow, because it's easy to kind of lose focus.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because I think that every producer, you're going to be influenced by somebody. And that's not to necessarily say that you're biting their style, but I could remember really when I really started to hone in and dissect these tracks that, he did this with the head, he did this with the snare, he chopped this sample this way. And I don't know, you have those light bulb moments sometimes when you just go through and do those things, and then you might listen to a track that you did where you tried to initially do something like that, and you kind of see, where you went wrong at. And I think a lot more guys need to do that, because I also feel in this era that there are a lot of people that are just putting loops together and not really developing their own sound, kind of with that being said. And there's a lot of, that's nothing wrong to me with using loops, but at least flip it, at least try to make your own out of it, rather than just throwing it onto a track and with some drums and then with some hats and, calling it a day. So, I definitely agree with you on that point.
Well, and that kind of brings, back to the conversation earlier of like, you want to loop 8 bars or 4 bars, cool, but like add some stuff over it every now and then. Add a chime, it's a simple, or hitting a ride cymbal. Do something to differentiate like those loops. So like one, like change is coming and maybe it's going to be a little different, but 2, like it's not the same thing over and over again. And I get like older technology that wasn't available back then, but we have the technology. You don't need to do that anymore. And I try, like, I'll start with 4 bars and I'll start with 8. Like, I'll start with a verse and I'll say, like, okay, how can I break this up a little bit? And that's kind of how I start, because, much to your point, I want to beef it up a little bit.
Yeah. What other plans do you have for the rest of like 2021 and to start 2022? Have you got that far yet, or, you still kind of just with the copyright and
So the copyright song's out. The Poet EP should, that'll be done soon. I have a tone song coming out that I had sent you. That'll be in a couple of weeks. There's a gentleman back in Massachusetts by the name of Purge, who's a great MC. He also has a song with copyright on his last album. He's got some music of mine that we're working on. Prime Prolific has a song of mine that he's working on. But as far as kind of like bigger projects, nothing in the works. It is more of just kind of, I try to take it month to month. I don't have that much advance notice. The Floodgates album I did with Sankofa is still going well. Still some good reviews and press coming out of that. It came out in August. So, I'll take that as far as, what's 2-3 months later and people are still reacting to it. So that's good. But as far as that, it's just kind of, just building. There's a track with Tones and Spit Gems and this guy out of Connecticut called God West, who I like. So I'm working on that. That should be out probably November, December. That's kind of it on the agenda right now. I like to keep a clean plate, if you will.
Yeah. It's always staying busy. It never stops, man. And I love it. I do this podcast. I'm an artist. I'm a producer. And I love staying busy, with something on my plate. Lately, it's been a lot of features, actually, that I've been doing for other people. So it's like when I think I have one thing down, something else comes out of the blue. So,
hey, it's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have.
Speaking of busy, I stay busy. El Biz out of Buffalo. I have a song with him coming out. I think I sent you that one. We'll probably put that out by the end of the year as well.
Okay. All right. Where can people find you at online?
So I'm on Instagram at DJ _Matty Lites. I think Instagram's been down for the day or whatever, as I've heard. And then I'm also on Bandcamp at DJ Matty Lite. That's about it. I don't have too many socials.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't that all you need anyway?
That's it. I got an Instagram and Twitter. I do Facebook too, but I'm more so I come and go. I don't really like to stay around there. I usually just reactivate it when I have some projects coming out so I can promote it, and then I shut it down again, and I just kind of back away.
Fair enough.
Instagram and Twitter is going to kind of be my main spots, and then YouTube, of course, as well. But hey, it was definitely, a pleasure having that conversation with you and, having you on the show. And just wanted to let you know that anytime you have anything coming or you want to promote something or get the word out about it, definitely reach out to me.
Of course.
Would love to definitely get you back on. Just wanted to also let everybody know you can follow me on Instagram at Dee._major music. And always looking to interview new producers, sound designers, and audio engineers. And this has been another edition of the Major Music Lounge, and we are out.